Last time, the plot thickened with such delicious complexity. The Xin tribe's horrifying scorched earth tactic, a move dripping with malice, was met by Xun Ge'er's brilliant counter-strategy, sophisticated psychological warfare. Winning hearts, using POWs as living proof against Xin propaganda, and aiding the abandoned. A fantastic shift. While the Han chief showcased top-down strategic agility by swiftly sealing the land bridge, what truly gripped us was Anvil's secret 3 don't kills and 3 great rewards, pure genius, revealing the Han tribe isn't just aiming for conquest, but for a stable, integrated future. Dissent was already brewing in the Xin camp over food, with mysterious voices questioning prairie soldier loyalty. The stage was perfectly set. Could Anvil's psychological offensive break the enemy from within before the big guns roared? Tonight, we dive headfirst into that simmering tension, into a humble shack where those carefully planted seeds of doubt, nurtured by hunger and fear, are about to be masterfully cultivated by a certain farmer. Whispers are about to ignite a wildfire from the inside out. The night, like a thick bolt of black velvet, tenderly enveloped the slumbering camp. A few furtive shadows, as if their sawls were greased, slipped out of their tents, the rustling sounds they made even fainter than mice relocating. Truth be told, with these grunts getting up to relieve themselves at night like a bustling market, who'd notice a missing head or an extra latrine spot. A classic case of turn-a-blind-eye management, which gave certain individuals an opening. At this moment, moonlight, like flowing water, filtered through layers of leaves, scattering mottled silver coins in the woods. Xun Ge'er, young Sun, and his group, plus 3 steppe soldier captives trussed up like sacrificial lambs, had slunk into the prearranged growth. That's right, the very same auspicious spot where Anvil and young Feng had secretly plotted their grand scheme. Seems this place was quite auspicious for business, especially the shady kind. Split up, take them down one by one. Xun Ge'er waved his hand, a hint of a general marshalling his troops on the battlefield, though the troops he was commanding were his own men, and their targets were 3 unlucky sods tied up like zongzi, glutinous rice dumplings steamed in bamboo tubes. A traditional Chinese food. 3 teams, each assigned 1 captive, dragged them to different nooks deep in the woods, ensuring a level of isolation where neighbors hear each other's dogs and chickens, yet never visit. A brilliant move, it prevented collusion and allowed for cross-verification. Anyone daring to report false intelligence would soon taste the iron fist of the people. Xun Ge'er's side was ruthlessly efficient. The unfortunate steppe soldier was slammed thwack against an ancient tree trunk thicker than his waist, the ropes biting so deep they seemed about to meld with his flesh. Before him, Xun Ge'er and 4 militiamen showed their faces openly, not even bothering with masks. A joke. A golden goose delivered to their doorstep, and they'd let him go back alive to spill the beans? Dream on. The steppe soldier, initially groggy, blinked. As his eyes focused on the faces before him, familiar yet alien, good heavens. Weren't these the militiamen brothers they'd shared meals with from the same pot? A chill shot up from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. Astonishment, anger, confusion, and a touch of betrayed indignation instantly overwhelmed him. MMPH, MMPH. He tried desperately to shout, but only pathetic, puppy-like whimpers escaped his throat. Of course, they weren't far from the main camp. If he actually screamed his lungs out, they'd all be finished. Gag him. Xun Ge'er barked, his eyes as cold as ice shards in the dead of winter. A quick-witted militiaman nearby, sharp as a tack, snatched a piece of animal hide, used to wipe who knows what, and plastered it over the steppe soldier's mouth, nearly squeezing the air he'd just inhaled back out. You, the one fluent in the steppe tongue, Xun Ge'er gestured to another militiaman. Tell him we just want to chat, ask a few things. Cooperate, and it's good for everyone. Try any tricks, humph. This forest has nice scenery, perfect for choosing him a nice, auspicious spot for his eternal rest. As the militiaman translated, he drew a gleaming machete from his waist and waved it before the steppe soldier's eyes. The moonlight glinting off the blade was like a viper's tongue, licking at his fragile nerves. This fellow was a spineless coward to begin with. Faced with this dual assault of verbal and physical intimidation, his legs trembled like a sieve. Thump. If he hadn't been tied to the tree, he'd have collapsed into a puddle of mush. Seeing the captive was ripe for the picking, Xun Ge'er's lips curled into a foxy smile. He nudged his chin at the militiaman acting as translator. Ask him, those several thousand brothers our Xin tribe sent out at the beginning of the year, vanished without a trace, no sign of them dead or alive. Where exactly have they hidden them? Did they double-cross them, slaughter them, and then try to pin this huge blame on the Han tribe, while pocketing our goods. Huh. The translator's jaw dropped wide enough to fit an egg, his face screaming, "Are you serious, Xun Ge'er? That's the most outrageous lie I've ever heard." In a world where even iron walks weren't commonplace, Xun Ge'er's understanding of psychological warfare was shockingly advanced. Heh, Xun Ge'er raised an eyebrow, supremely confident. This is called all's fair in war. Let's hear what bullshit he spouts first. The translator stammered an affirmative, but in his heart, he gave Xun Ge'er 100 thumbs up. Wow, interrogations can be played like this? Lesson learned. Once the translator delivered Xun Ge'er's earth-shattering accusation, word for word, the steppe soldier, upon hearing it, shivered violently. His eyes bulged, his face a canvas of, "I'm innocent, Your Honor." He desperately tried to refute, "Mmpwa," but his mouth was too thoroughly gagged. He could only struggle futilely, like a fish out of water. "Want to talk?" Xun Ge'er's lip twitched. With lightning speed, he seized the man's throat, pointed at his nose, and snarled in a chilling tone, "Listen, I'll loosen my grip in a moment. You dare make a sound? I guarantee, before that sound leaves your throat, your neck will be snapped." As he spoke, his 5 fingers tightened slightly. The steppe soldier's face instantly turned a liverish purple, his eyes about to roll back. Yes, Xun Ge'er was clearly a professional at throttling. The steppe soldier nodded vigorously, like a chick pecking at grain. Only then did Xun Ge'er release his grip and signal for the rag to be removed from his mouth. Fua, cough, cough. The fellow greedily sucked in a few lungfuls of pine-scented cool air, then burst into a torrent of howls, the translator beside him providing simultaneous interpretation. "No, sirs, it's really not what you think. We didn't kill your men. It was the Han Tribe. Those damned Han Tribe bastards used heavenly punishment." From miles away, millstone-sized iron balls rained down like hail, boom, 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 flying everywhere, smashing into the crowds, splat, splat. It was a massacre, blood and guts, severed limbs flying everywhere. Our allied forces were stunned, scared out of our wits, running back for dear life. How could we have had time to care for your men? I was slow. I saw with my own eyes your 2,000-plus brothers in bamboo armor, surrounded by the Han army like they were wrapping dumplings. What happened after? I don't know. But I reckon, with how ruthless the Han army is, if your men weren't chopped up and fed to the dogs on the spot, they were definitely captured as slaves. Want to come back? In your next life, maybe. Damn it. The translator slapped his thigh and turned to Xun Ge'er. "Xun Ge'er, you called it. These bastards really did take the 2,000-plus men to Tongling, the great commander, sent to bite off that tough piece of Han Tribe meat. Well now, the steppe people colluding with the Tongling was set in stone. Not so fast, there's more." Xun Ge'er stroked his chin, a glint in his eye. "Ask him again. When the Han Tribe attacked, their steppe soldiers ran faster than rabbits. Why did they abandon our Xin tribe's 2,000-plus brothers? Had they planned all along to use the Han Tribe to make cannon fodder of our men so they could monopolize the spoils?" The translator tossed this soul-crushing question over. Upon hearing it, the steppe soldier was so aggrieved tears almost welled up. His heart ached with bitterness. "Oh, my dear mother. Monopolize the spoils? We didn't even touch a speck of dust from Kaiyuan City's walls. Where would the spoils come from? Oh, right. If those iron chunks the Han army threw at us count as spoils, then we certainly harvested plenty, each of us fully loaded, nearly loading our lives away with them." "Brother, big brother, this is a colossal misunderstanding." The steppe soldier, face etched with misery, spilled the beans like they were pouring from a bamboo tube. "Before attacking Kaiyuan City, our great Khan and some damn Zhonglao, elder, from your Xin tribe had already worked out all the calculations. It was agreed. We steppe people would provide the main force, and your Xin tribe would provide divine weapons and bamboo scaling ladders for sieges. If we could take the city, the Han army's equipment would be split 50-50 between us. The city's livestock and population, also 50-50. Various artisans, you'd get the lion's share, but we'd get more ironware." The plan sounded beautiful, practically dripping with fat. But the problem is, we never even got near the city walls that day. Those Han Tribe bastards had no martial honor. They just set up formations outside the city and engaged us in open battle. And then they bloody well pulled out those damn strange weapons that could strike from miles away. Our men were scattered before we even got close. Couldn't find our own mothers. Everyone just wished their parents had given them 2 more legs. We were too busy running for our lives to even think about spoils. There wasn't a single hair to divide. How could we? With things laid out this clearly, the truth was as transparent as water. so clear you could see the turtles at the bottom. Xun Ge'er's interrogation tactic, this trick of getting something for nothing, was, one had to admit, brilliant. He hadn't asked directly. Instead, he'd packaged himself as an omniscient seer who already knew the inside story, demanding the fellow better confess. With just a few words, he'd shattered this steppe soldier's psychological defenses. Look at that, to save his own skin, and also to distance the steppe people from direct conflict with the Xian tribe. After all, if they started infighting at this juncture, no one would come out well. This guy had spilled the Tongling's dirty little secrets like beans from a bamboo tube, and conveniently pinned the blame for the annihilation of the Xian tribe's 2,000-plus men squarely on the Han tribe. TSK, the Tongling, oh the Tongling, your schemes were truly earth-shattering. For a bit of Han tribe technology, you didn't hesitate to collude with outsiders, even hashing out the post-victory division of spoils. What a pity, man proposes, heaven disposes. You thought you were trapping a turtle in a jar, but ended up getting bitten by the turtle instead. Aren't you furious? Xun Ge'er, this guy. What do we do with him? A militiaman rubbed his hands, his gaze flicking towards the steppe soldier who was now close to wetting his pants. The meaning was obvious. Silence him, right? Couldn't keep him around for New Year's. No rush. Xun Ge'er waved his hand, appearing exceptionally calm. Let's wait until the other two sides have also pried out the details. If they can't get them to talk, we'll need this guy to make a friendly guest appearance. Oh, right. When it's done, be quick and clean. Don't use a knife. Use a rope around the neck. Neat and tidy. Don't make a bloody mess everywhere. We still have to sneak back to camp. Reeking of blood, do you think the patrol guards are blind? Xun Ge'er's attention to detail was frankly terrifying. Even his plans for silencing them were so eco-friendly. Strangling these unlucky sods didn't particularly bother the men. Those not of our tribe are bound to have different loyalties, especially those who knew things they shouldn't. But upon hearing they still had to return to camp, several militiamen felt their scalps tingle. Good heavens. We just killed allied soldiers. Isn't going back like walking into a trap? Yet, looking at Xun Ge'er's composed demeanor, that everything is under control, look, they felt, perhaps, it wasn't a big deal. After all, it had been agreed from the start. Unless absolutely necessary, they wouldn't tear off all pretenses. Now that the truth was out, leading all the hoodwinked militiamen brothers away from this muddled war became their most critical KPI, key performance indicator. People are, by nature, followers. As long as a few bold leaders raised their arms and rallied, the rest of the lambs would surely follow in a rush, regardless of whether a mountain of knives or a sea of fire lay ahead. Before long, faint, muffled wails and howls of MMMPHO and ARG drifted from the other two ends of the woods, interspersed with sharp crack sounds. Well, it seemed the brothers in the other two groups lacked Xun Ge'er's patience and intellect to convince through virtue. Their interrogation methods were brutally simple and appallingly crude. Won't talk? Beat them. Punches and kicks were just appetizers. Later, some young genius had a brainwave, cutting down a few tough, flexible bamboo strips to use as whips. They thrashed those two steppe soldiers until they were screaming for their mothers, their skin split open, on the verge of meeting their step's eternal heaven. Finally, under the dual assault of physical persuasion and mental breakdown, those two tough nuts, or perhaps not so tough nuts, obediently spat out every last bit of trivial information they knew. Debrief. In the woods, the three teams, like underground operatives making contact, furtively gathered. They laid out the exclusive bombshells they'd just pried from the captives' mouths and compared notes. Hey, pretty damn close. The general gist was shockingly consistent. Their addle-brained Tongling, the great commander, had indeed hooked up with a steppe tribal leader named Maodun, a name that just sounded like trouble, colluding like jackals to raid the Han tribe's Kaiyuan City. Instance. Well, now the evidence was irrefutable. Denial was futile. The only difference was also rather interesting. These three unlucky captives, as fate would have it, weren't from the same faction. Though all under Maodun's command, there were still hierarchies, degrees of closeness and distance. After all, the steppes were vast, with countless tribes. Their positions during battle differed, so naturally, their escape routes and directions were wildly varied. It was perfectly normal for the rumors they heard to have slight discrepancies. It was like watching the same ball game. Could someone in the front row see the same details as someone in the back? However, these trivial details were useless to Xun Ge'er, young son, and his men. They only needed to know one core fact. They had been royally screwed by those high-end mighty bigwigs, used as cannon fodder. That was enough. As for what to do next, Xun Ge'er waved his hand. Withdraw first. Back to camp. We'll plan from there. Yes, very leader-like, even if his subordinates were just these dozen or so temps. The 15 shadows converged again. Under the moonlight, their gazes met in the darkness, glinting with an inexplicable light. Xun Ge'er wasted no words. He raised his hand, fingers held together like a blade, and drew it across his own neck. Simple, brutal, and remarkably effective. The men understood instantly, nodding silently. Without a peep, they each took their head count quota and silently crept back to the interrogation rooms. Crack, crack. A few faint sounds of bone splintering echoed in the silent woods, barely louder than a mosquito's hum. Those 3 steppe soldiers didn't even have time to grunt before they went to meet their eternal heaven. A completely silent operation, professional. After cleaning up the loose ends, the 15 temporary executioners made themselves scarce, faster than rabbits. They skirted the bright campfires, dodged the yawning patrolmen, and like a band of midnight ghosts, slipped back into their own kennels. However, no sooner had their feet left the woods than rustle, rustle. Another set of light footsteps, softer than falling leaves, sounded in the woodland. Under the moonlight, a squad of lean, formidable men clad in black battle robes and dark green crocodile skin armor appeared silently beside the 3 freshly deceased corpses, as if they'd materialized from the earth itself. Whoa. Han Tribe scouts. Their noses were sharper than a police dog's. They deftly untied the bodies from the trees and dragged them together. Swish, swish, swish. A flash of cold light, and 3 heads hit the ground, rolling a few times, covered in dirt and leaves. Next, this group of scouts began to case the joint, leaving clear military boot prints. They also hung several bright red cloth strips on nearby branches, fluttering in the wind like some eerie markers. The most audacious move was deliberately dropping a crumpled piece of paper on the ground. On it, flamboyant calligraphy read, "By order of the Tiger Charge Guard Command, your scout team is to penetrate deep behind enemy lines and investigate the enemy's situation, without fail." At the bottom, the bright red seal of a commanding officer was clearly visible. Good heavens, this disguise was professional. Though riddled with flaws, it was enough to fool those unseasoned country bumpkins. Having completed this post-production work, the scouts, thoroughly satisfied, picked up their 3 freshly acquired trophies, slung them over their shoulders like sacks of potatoes, and withdrew, pleased as punch. Though they hadn't killed the men, the credit for staging the scene was undeniably theirs. They could brag about this back at camp. Meanwhile, Xun Ge'er, leading his 15 daredevils, scrambled back to their barracks. The moment they entered, dozens of eyes swish-focused on them. The air instantly froze, tension and bewilderment hanging heavy under the dim oil lamps. The old man assigned to guard duty and keep watch, unable to hold back any longer, was the first to jump out, spittle flying. "Well, you little rascals, did you find out anything? Or did you just go for a stroll and come back?" "A stroll? You're quite the joker, old sir." A young man, panting heavily, plopped down on a straw mat, wiping sweat from his forehead. "We found out. Exactly as Xun Ge'er guessed. Not a bit off." "Really?" The others swarmed around, eyes wide as saucers. "Would I lie?" Another team member interjected, his voice thick with suppressed excitement and lingering fear. "We grabbed 3. Interrogated them separately. Different methods for different people. Hey, guess what? What those 3 bastards said was like it was carved from the same mold." Spill it, the crowd urged, scratching their heads and ears, impatient. Back in early spring this year, our wise and brilliant Tongling incited the various Zhanglao elders to gather over 2,000 men in bamboo armor. They followed a steppe fellow named Maodun to attack that. Oh, right, Kaiyuan City of the Han Tribe. And the result? No need to ask, they definitely got their asses handed to them. Beaten black and blue by the Han Tribe, sent packing with their tails between their legs. Those 2,000 or 3,000 men Tongling sent, I heard they were caught by the Han army while trying to escape, surrounded like dumplings. Not a single one got out. Whether they're dead or alive, those steppe soldiers couldn't say for sure. Then, Maodun's men also suffered. Those who weren't killed were captured, and the rest became like frightened birds, scrambling for any rat hole to hide in. The 3 we caught were stragglers like that. Later on, around mid-year, our Tongling, probably afraid the Han tribe would come for revenge, sent people to the steppes again to pull strings, wanting to recruit soldiers and build a firewall. But somehow, one thing led to another, and they went from mercenaries to strategic partners. Those scattered soldiers hiding in the nooks and crannies of the steppes simply packed up their families and came to our bamboo island, saying they wanted land to settle down here. The price, naturally, was to be cannon fodder for us, to fight the Han tribe together. What happened next, you've all seen. That's the damn situation. Before Xun Ge'er could speak, another quick-tongued member of the squad had spilled all the intel like beans from a bamboo tube. A wave of sharp inhales swept through the tent. Everyone's jaw dropped, wide enough to fit a goose egg. Speculation was one thing, but hearing the testimony from those involved firsthand, the impact was entirely different. The old gatekeeper turned his gaze to Xun Ge'er, who had remained silent, his eyes questioning. Xun Ge'er slowly nodded, his voice low but firm. That's right. That's what we found out. 3 men, interrogated separately, consistent accounts. Then, what about those 3 men? From a corner of the tent, a timid militiaman asked, trembling, afraid the 3 captives might come back to report them. Relax, a squad member suddenly interjected, his voice chilling, his eyes like poisoned daggers. They won't be opening their mouths again. Hiss. A cold dread shot up from the soles of their feet to the tops of their heads. These lads, they went out for a bit and came back like completely different people? Especially the few who'd done the deed themselves. The ferocity in their eyes was unsettling to look at. As for any post-killing psychological trauma, guilt? Sorry, in this era where human life was cheaper than grass, that didn't exist. They butchered pigs and sheep daily without batting an eye. Strangling 3 enemy captives without even seeing blood? What kind of psychological impact could that have? At most, they might think, not a bad feel to it? A few of the more timid ones couldn't help but shiver, feeling that these guys, freshly returned from hell, were scarier than ghosts. The bolder ones were somewhat better, just finding the atmosphere a bit oppressive. As long as no one's hurt, that's good, that's good. The old gatekeeper coughed dryly, breaking the silence. But now that the truth is out, what do we do next? Tell all the militiamen, brothers? And then make a run for it? Anyway, these old bones of mine don't want to take the blame for that damned Tongling. He's a big shot of the Xian clan. We small, unrelated families are nothing to him. The old man's words struck a chord with everyone. Another dead silence fell upon the tent. Indeed, that Xian Tongling, driven by insatiable greed, had insisted on provoking the Han tribe, that ferocious tiger. Now that he'd been bloodied, and they were coming for revenge, he was dragging these unrelated clans to be his scapegoats. On what grounds? Knowing full well that a head-on clash with the Han tribe was suicide, wouldn't it be better to go home to their wives, children, and warm beds, farm a little, fish a little? Did they really have to wait here to die? After a long silence, all eyes, once again, converged on Xun Ge'er. You came up with the idea. Now the truth is clear. How to clean up this mess still depends on you, our master strategist. Xun Ge'er met their gazes, took a deep breath, and suddenly dropped a bombshell. Do you know that Elder Jin, who's in charge of us several thousand men here in Xingqing Gorge, he actually came from the Han tribe side? What? Elder Jin is from the Han tribe? My dear mother's uncle's father. This can't be possible, right? The tent instantly erupted, exclamations rising and falling. These grunts rarely even saw a squad leader. How would they know the origins of those lofty Zhanglao? But Xun Ge'er's current persona was that of a well-informed and resourceful individual. His words carried weight. They believed him. Wait. Xun Ge'er quickly waved his hands, exasperated. Big brothers, you've misunderstood me. I never said Elder Jin is a Han traitor. If he were a spy sent by the Han tribe, would Tongling be foolish enough to make him in Zhanglao and put him in charge of such an important defensive line? Hearing this, everyone nodded, agreeing it made sense. In Zhanglao of that stature, how could he be from an enemy power? Only a lunatic would do that. Then what are you up to, kid? The old man pressed, unable to resist. I heard a rumor. Xun Ge'er lowered his voice, speaking mysteriously, that our Elder Jin did indeed come from the Han tribe's side. He only just got this seat as Elder Jin in the first half of this year. Don't be hasty, let me finish. His ancestors had some connection with the Han tribe, not that he's Han himself. You know, to the east of our bamboo island, there's a Han tribe delegation, right? They often hire locals to work for them. Our Elder Jin is something like that. It's said that when Elder Jin was young, he was an apprentice in a Han tribe workshop and learned excellent blacksmithing skills. Later, the previous Elder Shang went on a friendly visit to the Han tribe and by the way, brought back a batch of skilled craftsmen. Our Elder Jin was one of them. Because he could forge ironware and had superb skills, the Tongling promoted him exceptionally, granting him the title of Elder Jin. Oh, so that's how it is. Everyone had an epiphany. Then what exactly is your plan, kid? The old man squinted, trying to figure it out. You want to tell Elder Jin about this? Use his status to pull some strings. Old Sir is wise. Xun Ge'er snapped his fingers. Elder Jin, to put it bluntly, is like us, an outsider. In this bamboo island territory, he has no roots, no backing. Although the Tongling values him and made him in Zhonglao, compared to those old, entrenched clan Zhonglao, he's a commander without an army. Think about it. Why did the Tongling place him here in Xun Gorge, at the very forefront against the Han army? It's obvious. He's using him as a shield, just like us. We're all consumables. In this current situation, does Elder Jin have any chance of winning against the Han tribe? Not a snowball's chance in hell. If we tell him the truth about the Tongling colluding with the steppe people and provoking the Han tribe, what do you think his reaction will be? Could he use his past connections in the Han tribe, or let's say familiarity, to find a way out for us and for himself? You mean, convince Elder Jin to lead us, to surrender to the Han tribe? A militiaman blurted out. No, no, no. Absolutely not. Another militiaman immediately retorted, his face pale. Haven't you heard? The Han tribe is here for revenge. They kill on sight. If we surrender, who knows if they'll chop off our heads on the spot. Hep, silly boy. A lean man beside Xun Ge'er, young Sun, scoffed, spitting. The Han army kills on sight? Which latrine pit did you hear that from? It's just lies cooked up by Tongling, the great commander, and his cronies to fool us. Exactly. Another militiaman immediately chimed in, filled with righteous indignation. They spin these tall tales just to use us as pawns, forcing us to cough up our life-saving rations and risk our families' lives to be their cannon fodder, to block the Han tribe's blades. Those damned scoundrels, their consciences have been eaten by dogs. That's right. Someone else agreed, his voice trembling with emotion. Anyone who isn't blind could see how the Han tribe dealt with us before. The Han people, they're what you call cultured. They talk about Han etiquette. They're nothing like those blood-drinking savages. The way I see it, as long as we surrender, pin the blame on the Tongling and his bastards, and make it clear this has nothing to do with us, the Han army will most likely let us off. But. From the corner, the timid voice piped up again, weakly. What if? What if the Han army is determined to make an example of us this time? Who dares gamble their whole family's lives? Well, now that Xun Ge'er's golden idea was out, the tent instantly turned into a chaotic marketplace, buzzing like a pot of boiling porridge. Some felt the Tongling was a rotten egg, and the Han tribe was the promised land. Others were scared witless, thinking their lives were paramount. If they gambled and lost, their whole families would be meeting King Yama. Spittle flew, faces flushed, and necks bulged. It looked like they were about to escalate from gentlemanly debate to an all-out brawl. All of you, shut your traps. The old gatekeeper shot up, his fan-like hand slamming down, his voice like a great bell, finally quelling the racket that threatened to tear the roof off. This idea came from this kid, Xun Ge'er. Let him speak first. The old man pointed at the composed Xun Ge'er amidst the crowd. Swish. All eyes, like searchlights, focused on Xun Ge'er once more. Xun Ge'er cleared his throat and, unhurriedly, posed a question, his tone as casual as asking, "What's for dinner tonight?" Uncles, brothers, the situation now, frankly, we don't have many options left. Let me first ask everyone a heart-wrenching question. Do you want to find a stable place, have your wives, children, and warm beds, and live a good life? Or do you want to go bare-chested, wielding rusty scrap metal, and fight to the death against the Han tribe's tiger wolf army, all clad in iron? That question, its intention was as clear as Sima Zhao's ambition, known to all. A classic, either-or trap, and a ridiculously easy one at that. But these rough-and-tumble men in the tent, they didn't have such convoluted minds. They were straight shooters. Hearing Xun Ge'er's soul-searching question, they didn't even think. The answer blurted out. Is that even a question? Of course, we want to live. Who the hell wants to go die? Exactly. Our meager possessions against the Han army's equipment? That's an egg against a stone. If we really fight, we're all done for. Live our lives. Live our lives. Whoever wants to fight can go fight. I'm not playing along. Hey, quite rare. The tent had finally reached a consensus, a truly historic moment. Nonsense. If they really wanted to fight the Han tribe to the death, Why would they have gone to all that trouble to capture and interrogate prisoners just now? Good. Xun Ge'er was waiting for this. The corners of his mouth turned up slightly. Since nobody wants to die in vain, we now have two paths to choose from. I'll lay them out, and everyone can discuss them further. The first path, what I just said, go find Elder Jin. Let him step forward, get in touch with the Han tribe, pass a message, and see if we can achieve a peaceful liberation. We don't want to fight. As long as the Han tribe agrees to let us go home and continue farming our old lands, we'll quickly raise the white flag and surrender. As for the Tongling's mess, let him sort it out with the Han army himself. I'm not going to be a scapegoat. The second path, if, and I mean if, the Han tribe is unyielding, refuses our surrender, and is dead set on making an example of us, then we won't be cowards either. We'll expose all of the Tongling's dirty dealings with the steppe people to all our militiamen brothers. We'll unite, fight our way back to Qingchuan Valley, and rescue our women and children. Then, we'll all escape this wretched bamboo island, go beyond the sea, find a place where no one knows us, and start over. All right, two paths laid out before you. Gentlemen, please choose. After Xun Ge'er finished speaking, the tent exploded again, even more boisterously than before. Choose the first path? Sounded pretty good. Being able to keep the little bit of land left by their ancestors, continue living with their wives, children, and warm beds, it was like a pie falling from the sky. But would the Han tribe agree? Would their wise and brilliant Xin de Tongling let it go so easily? And could the women and children trapped in Qingchuan Valley be successfully rescued? This string of question marks, like massive mountains, weighed down on everyone, making it hard to breathe. Choose the second path? It sounded thrilling, especially for the young men overflowing with hormones. It was an epic adventure. Unite all the militiamen. Rescue their wives and children. Set sail. Create a new homeland. Make their own history. Good heavens, just thinking about it was exciting. This romanticism was practically Hollywood blockbuster material. However, the older, more experienced men with families to support turned green upon hearing this. Nonsense. A grizzled middle-aged man slapped his thigh, spittle flying far. Migrate across the sea? Find a new homeland? Do you think this is child's play? That's bloody suicide. The entire clan will die halfway there. That's right. Another weather-beaten old soldier chimed in, shaking his head repeatedly, his eyes filled with worry. When I was young, I traveled with a merchant caravan to the grasslands beyond the sea. Those grasslands are endless. Just walking on two legs, you wouldn't reach the end even if you walked until the year of the monkey and the month of the horse. Besides, we're completely in the dark about what it's like over there. With our small numbers, dragging our families and so many supplies, before we even get out of the grasslands, we'll be robbed blind by those nomadic tribes on horseback. We won't even have our underpants left. They're not like those cowardly steppe soldiers in our camp. They're real, battle-hardened bandits. Besides, the most fertile and well-watered parts of the grasslands are now all Han tribe territory. I heard they built 3 large cities there. If we go there, aren't we just walking into a trap? Unless... The old soldier paused, his gaze sweeping strangely over the eager young men. You want to live like those nomadic tribes, following the water and grass, herding horses and sheep? Let me tell you, there's nothing on the grasslands but grass. Lack of water. Can't grow crops. Even salt has to be bought from the Han tribe and from us. That life is so bitter it could choke a man to death. Well, those 2 buckets of cold water doused most of the enthusiasm of the hot-blooded young men. But there were always a few stubborn fools who wouldn't give up, still clinging to unrealistic fantasies, weakly asking. Then, beyond the grasslands, is there no place where we can survive? No, the old soldier from before stated decisively, his tone brook no argument. I heard from the old folks, south of the grasslands, the closest part to us, it's all barren mountains and harsh waters, very little arable land, and a lack of water. West of the grasslands, it's all high mountains and snowy ridges, frozen like an ice cellar year-round. Forget farming. Even a piss would freeze into an icicle. North of the grasslands, I've heard there are vast forests, rivers, and fertile land. But the problem is, can we get there? Even if we do, that's Han tribe territory. East of the grasslands is the lake region controlled by the Han tribe. Further east, what's on the other side of the lake? This old man doesn't know. But think about it. The Han tribe has so many large ships, would they give up good land to others? Why is the Han tribe so damn powerful? They occupy the richest and most fertile lands. If we run off to find a new homeland, even if we're lucky enough not to die halfway, we'll eventually clash with the Han tribe. Won't that be a dead end too? Instead of messing around and traveling so far to die, we might as well just surrender to the Han tribe now. At least we can save our lives and continue toiling on our ancestral lands. You young whippersnappers, if you really want to go across the sea to broaden your horizons and gain experience, wait until the Han tribe defeats the Tongling. We can directly ask the Han tribe officials if they'll allow us Bamboo Island people to migrate and live in their territory. Wouldn't that be 100 times better than us blindly stumbling around? These words were well-reasoned and convincing. The older militiamen, already inclined towards caution, became even more resolute in their desire to surrender after hearing this analysis. Although the young men were still a bit reluctant, they had to admit that old ginger is spicier. Finding a new homeland on their own was too risky. It was practically gambling with the lives of the entire clan. And so, after a fierce clash of ideas and weighing of pros and cons, the people in the tent finally reached another consensus. Choose the first path. Diplomacy before force. Send someone to find Elder Jin, have him negotiate with the Han tribe, and see if they can secure favorable terms for a peaceful liberation. If the Han tribe agreed to spare their lives, it would naturally be a joyous outcome for all. If the Han tribe didn't agree, or if the conditions they proposed were too harsh and unacceptable, then they could always resort to the second plan and fight to the death. It wouldn't be too late. All right. Xun Ge'er, young Sin, slapped his thigh, his voice decisive. Since everyone trusts me, at dawn, I'll go sound out Elder Jin. I'll take full responsibility for this. I'll say it was my idea. If he nods, great, let him contact the Han tribe. If he turns hostile and wants to make an example of me, don't worry, brothers, even if Xun Ge'er loses his head, leaving a scar the size of a bowl, I'll never drag any of you down with me. With that, the lad thumped down onto his straw mat, closed his eyes to rest, leaving a group of men in the tent staring at each other. Moonlight filtered through the cracks in the tent, illuminating Xun Ge'er's somewhat thin back. Silently, some clasped their hands, others bowed with hands clasped, traditional gestures of respect, towards his back, expressing their reverence and a tiny sliver of worry. This kid had guts, but it was also a risky business. The next day, just as dawn was breaking, before the roosters had crowed their second round, Xun Ge'er, as if his backside was on fire, didn't even bother to wolf down breakfast. He rushed out of the tent, heading straight for Elder Jin's residence. He'd specifically instructed that no one follow. He'd wade through this murky water alone. After seeing off their hero, the atmosphere in the tent grew somewhat heavy. The men silently lined up for breakfast. Seeing those steppe soldiers gobbling down fragrant cornmeal rice while their own bowls held watery, tasteless gruel, a knot of frustration tightened in their chests. Muffled curses against the Tongling, the great commander, rippled through the air, barely louder than a mosquito's hum. However, before they could finish cursing the Tongling's 18 generations of ancestors, a piece of news so terrifying it could make a man wet his pants, spread like wildfire through the entire camp, carried by the gossipy cooks. Hey, did you hear? Something big happened last night. A cook lowered his voice, sidling up mysteriously to a militiaman collecting his meal. What is it? So secretive. The Han tribe. The Han tribe snuck into our camp last night. In the woods to the east, they found 3 bodies, all steppe soldiers. Their heads were gone, and a bunch of Han tribe stuff was left nearby. Holy crap. For real. Don't you go spreading alarmist rumors here, kid. Careful or the Zhonglao elder will skin you alive. A militiaman who had participated in last night's forest rendezvous felt his heart thump. The ceramic bowl in his hand almost slipped, spilling half its contents. Good thing the cook dishing out food didn't notice. The news was too explosive. Who wouldn't tremble hearing it? It'd be abnormal not to be scared. Hey, what good would it do me to lie to you? I'm telling you, this morning, some of our kitchen staff went into the woods to chop firewood and saw it with their own eyes. That kid was so scared he scrambled back, pissed himself on the spot. Later, it was reported to the Zhonglao, and the Zhonglao personally went to see. The bodies had been brought back. The cook spoke with spittle flying, as if he'd witnessed it himself. Heads, all cut off. Another militiaman involved in the operation asked, feigning composure, afraid of giving himself away. What did the bodies look like? How do you know it was the Han tribe? This kid was asking quite professionally. Looked like last night's field exercise hadn't been for nothing. You wouldn't understand. The cook had an "you're too young" expression. The Zhonglao said it was done by a type of Han tribe soldier called scouts. They're the Han tribe's most elite troops, specializing in these dirty, tiring jobs like infiltrating behind enemy lines, capturing informants, and sabotage. If you don't talk, they beat you to death. Oh my goodness. You didn't see how gruesome those 3 bodies were. Covered in bloody gashes, like they'd been sliced by 1,000 cuts. There were even bloody bamboo strips lying nearby. They must have been brutally tortured first, got the information they wanted, and then snick off with their heads. I hear, on the Han tribe's side, merits are rewarded based on how many heads you collect. Those Han soldiers, when they fight, it's like chopping melons and vegetables. They aim straight for the neck. They carry them in their hands, hang them from their waists, even spear them on their pikes. Hey, they're happier to see a human head than their own dear wives. This cook, while ladling out porridge, let his tongue wag, painting a vivid and terrifying picture. The surrounding men felt chills run down their spines, cold sweat beading on their foreheads. A few timid ones subconsciously touched their own necks, terrified that if they ever faced the Han army, their own heads would become pendants dangling from someone's waist, swaying back and forth. How horrifying would that be? And those few militiamen who had personally sent off the 3 steppe soldiers last night felt their scalps tingle even more, cold sweat soaking their backs. A group of men, holding their bowls, squatted on the ground in a circle, looking like a flock of terrified quails. Suddenly, someone muttered softly, "That's not right. Didn't you guys say last night you strangled them? How come their heads are gone too?" "We did strangle them," a militiaman involved in the operation whispered back, a hint of confusion and fear in his voice. Who the hell knows how their heads disappeared? Decapitation? If you cut off a head, you get blood everywhere. You can smell that stench from a mile away. If we'd come back like that, wouldn't we have been exposed on the spot? That's true. The person next to him nodded thoughtfully. Then their heads, how did they just vanish? Could it really have been the Han tribe? I'd say it's 9 out of 10. Another participant, stroking his chin, began his master detective analysis. Perhaps, last night, Han tribe scouts really did sneak over in the later part of the night. They saw 3 ready-made corpses on the ground and just took the heads back for a reward. It's not impossible. Didn't you hear that, cook? On the Han army side, merits are counted by heads. It's free loot. Why not take it? Oh, my dear mother's uncle's father. A militiaman, upon hearing this brilliant deduction, slumped to the ground, his face as white as a sheet. If that's the case, then we all just narrowly escaped with our lives, didn't we? If we'd come back just a little later and run into those ruthless Han tribe scouts, then today, there wouldn't be 3 headless corpses lying on the ground, but 18. Our heads would probably all be relocated. Hiss. Everyone was stunned. Thinking it over, it really made sense. They had just left, and the Han tribe's cleanup crew had arrived to collect heads. If they'd been a step slower, wouldn't they have become a buy 1 get 15 free super gift package, all bundled up for the Han army to boost their kill count? And bone-chilling cold instantly shot from the soles of their feet to the crowns of their heads. The militiamen fell silent, a mixture of fear and relief churning within them like an overturned bottle of 5-flavor seasoning. At the same time, their fear of the unseen Han army multiplied severalfold. These Han soldiers were too damn ruthless. This headless mystery, after being embellished by the cook's passionate narration, quickly fermented and spread throughout the entire camp. The soldiers' fear of the Han army and their reluctance to fight spread like a plague, causing considerable panic for a time. Fortunately, it hadn't reached the point of mutiny yet. It was still within a controllable range. After all, life was precious. No one wanted their head to become someone else's trophy. And the militiamen from the tent who had planned and participated in this bloodbath in the woods huddled like guilty quails in a corner of the camp, not daring to breathe too loudly. While carefully concealing themselves, they anxiously awaited the return of their only hope, Xun Ge'er. At this moment, Xun Ge'er, upon whom they had pinned such high hopes, was sitting comfortably in Elder Jin Anvil's tent. You read that right, comfortably. Not only comfortably, but there was also steaming hot meat on the table, its aroma filling the air. Xun Ge'er, while gnawing on a meat bone, listened intently as Elder Jin Anvil imparted the Han army's surrender policy. That's right, surrender policy. And Xun Ge'er wasn't the only one attending the lecture. To quickly gain control of the grassroots militiamen and shake the foundations of the Xin tribe's rule, Anvil had quietly activated many former underground couriers who used to supply intelligence to the Jinwu Guard, the Han tribe's secret intelligence organization. These individuals came from complex backgrounds. Some were officially recruited insiders of the Jinwu Guard. Others had strong ties to the Han tribe and were purely helping out, becoming intelligence peddlers without even knowing what they were delivering, essentially naive outsiders exploited by the Jinwu Guard. They might not even have heard the name Jinwu Guard, only knowing they were serving the great and noble Han tribe. There were also some who were scions of locally renowned clans, or the precious darlings of village elders or chiefs. These young people were quick-witted, receptive to new ideas, and easily mesmerized by the dazzling array of goods from the Han tribe, readily succumbing to sugar-coated bullets. Without even realizing it, they'd spill all sorts of Xin tribe secrets as casual gossip after meals. Xun Ge'er belonged to this category of promising talent, being specially cultivated. What he had told his brothers in the tent earlier wasn't entirely false. He was indeed the eldest son of a village elder and had maintained close ties with the Han tribe. Because of his radical thinking and being a staunch pro-Han advocate, he had been developed as an outer circle member by the Jinwu Guard. Of course, he didn't know about the impressive-sounding Jinwu Guard. He only knew he was serving the great Han tribe. If he did well, he would be rewarded with a noble title by the leader, obtain the coveted Han tribe household registration, and live a superior life in the Han tribe. This was his primitive motivation for being a traitor, oh no, an underground worker. Simple and crude, but effective. The sun gradually dipped towards the west, painting half the sky red with evening clouds. Xun Ge'er hadn't returned. The atmosphere in the tent grew increasingly anxious. The air seemed to solidify, pressing down, making it hard to breathe. Xun Ge'er, why isn't he back yet? Could he have been? Snip snip by that Elder Jin, a militiaman muttered, his eyes filled with fear. Don't talk nonsense. The old gatekeeper glared at him, lowering his voice to reassure. I reckon not. Before dinner this evening, I specifically wandered over to the Zhonglau's main tent. It was quiet over there, no commotion at all. If Elder Jin really wanted to kill Xun Ge'er, he'd definitely do it with great fanfare, making an example to show the whole army the consequences of surrendering. How could it be so quiet? That's right. Another older militiaman who had participated in the operation nodded in agreement. Just this morning, news spread about the Han army's night raid, killing 3 steppe soldiers. I reckon Elder Jin is scared to death right now too. He came from the Han tribe's side originally. If he knew about the Tongling's dirty deeds, he definitely wouldn't want to be their cannon fodder. I guess, he probably listened to Xun Ge'er and sent someone to contact the Han army. That round trip would take some time, wouldn't it? Everyone, stay calm. Nothing will happen. Hearing this analysis, the men's suspended hearts finally eased a little. Yes, everyone needs to stay calm. The old man emphasized again. However, we can't let down our guard. Tonight, we'll take turns on watch. If something unexpected really happens, we can wake everyone up immediately, grease our sauls, and scram. Also, we need to find a way to send a few more people to keep an eye on the Zhonglau's main tent. If there's any sign of trouble, report back immediately. Right. Taking turns on watch is a must, someone else declared. And so, the men began to chatter, assigning watch shifts and choosing who would be responsible for gathering information. Thus, in unease and anxious anticipation, another long night passed. The next morning, Xun Ge'er still hadn't returned, as if he had vanished into thin air within the camp. No one from above came to question them, and the militiamen in his tent didn't dare say a peep, afraid that actively inquiring with Elder Jin would expose themselves. They could only continue to wait anxiously, each day feeling like a year. They waited until after dinner in the evening, when the sky was almost completely dark, and still there was no sign of Xun Ge'er. The atmosphere in the tent had become extremely oppressive. A few impatient ones even began to whisper suggestions. Maybe we should just run for it? If we wait any longer, the day lily buds will be cold. Just as everyone was disheartened and preparing for a mass breakout. Creak. The tent flap was lifted from the outside. A familiar figure appeared before them in the dim firelight. It was Xun Ge'er. He was back. Whoosh. The militiamen in the tent, like a flock of starving chicks, instantly surrounded Xun Ge'er, packing him in tightly. A few quick-witted ones immediately ran to the tent entrance, warily peering outside, simultaneously acting as temporary guards. The others chattered excitedly, eagerly surrounding Xun Ge'er, their voices filled with anxiety, anticipation, and a tiny hint of fear. Xun Ge'er, my dear brother, you're finally back. Yeah, if you hadn't come back, us brothers were really about to pack up and run. You don't know, the night we left, the Han tribe guys snuck over right after and cut off the heads of those 3 unlucky sods. That scene, TSK, it was terrifying. I don't want to stay in this godforsaken place any longer. In the tent, the men, like they'd seen their savior, swarmed around Xun Ge'er, young Sun, who had just entered, packing him in so tight he could barely breathe. Their chattering was enough to give anyone a headache. Everyone, quiet down. Let Xun Ge'er catch his breath. The old gatekeeper, relying on his age and booming voice, finally managed to quiet down this eagerly awaiting crowd. He then rescued Xun Ge'er, who was nearly squashed flat in the middle, and handed him a bamboo tube of cool, fresh water. Done. Xun Ge'er took the bamboo tube, first tossing out 2 words that calmed everyone's restless hearts. Then, glug glug, he downed the water in one go, wiped his mouth, and sat cross-legged on the straw mat, ready to hold his press conference. Hearing the word, done, everyone's eyes lit up. They instantly fell silent, ears pricked up like they were waiting for a storyteller, staring expectantly at Xun Ge'er. Hey. Xun Ge'er cleared his throat, a smug smile on his face. That day, I told Elder Jin our suspicions. Man, he was so shocked his jaw almost dropped. However, Xun Ge'er's tone shifted, a hint of slyness in it. I didn't dare tell him we'd already interrogated those steppe soldiers thoroughly. I just said it was my personal guess, purely a wild thought. After Elder Jin heard my brilliant insight, his eyes rolled, and he tricked a clueless leader from among those steppe soldiers. He lured him to a corner, and then, the 2 of us gave him another, in-depth interview. The result? Exactly the same as what we'd found out before. That really pissed Elder Jin off. His face turned green. Only then did he realize it was that old bastard Tongling, the great commander, stabbing us in the back, playing us for fools. Then, he adopted my brilliant suggestion and decided to send people to the Han tribe to properly discuss our abandoning darkness for light. Oh no, I mean, our peaceful liberation, and also to negotiate our surrender terms. And then, we took that steppe soldier leader, who'd been interrogated into a blubbering mess, as our meet and greet gift for abandoning darkness for light, and happily delivered him to the Han tribe. Ha ha ha. Xun Ge'er was getting carried away with his story when he was suddenly interrupted. A militiaman, eyes wide with disbelief, asked, Xun Ge'er, you, don't tell me, this time, you personally went to negotiate with the Han tribe. Who else? Xun Ge'er retorted matter-of-factly, then slowly explained. Our Elder Jin is a big shot, in command of the entire camp. Can he just disappear randomly? If he suddenly vanished from the main camp for a day or 2, wouldn't all hell break loose and arouse unnecessary suspicion? This idea was mine. I speak Han. I know the whole story inside out, and most importantly, I can represent the feelings of most of our militiamen brothers. So, the Zhonglao elder sent a few capable brothers with me to pay a friendly visit to the Han tribe. For real. Then are you okay? The Han tribe didn't do anything to you, did they? A slightly younger boy, his eyes sparkling with adoration, couldn't help but ask. This Xun Ge'er was practically a lone hero in their hearts. Nonsense. Do I look like I'm missing any limbs? Xun Ge'er puffed out his chest proudly, then continued his adventure tale. I led them into Han tribe territory. Before we even got close to their main camp, we were surrounded by a group of Han soldiers dressed in pitch-black clothes, holding gleaming steel sabers and sturdy crossbows. That formation, TSK, it was terrifying. I quickly shouted in Han, Our own people. Our own people. We're here to talk to your officer. We even brought a gift. When they heard me speak Han and saw us escorting a miserable-looking steppe soldier captive, they finally didn't shoot us full of arrows on the spot and let us into their main camp. Xun Ge'er, you've got some serious nerve. That's awesome. In the tent, another young hothead couldn't help but interject, his eyes shining with excitement. What's the Han army camp like? Tell us about it. Smack. The old man slapped the back of the boy's head, scolding irritably. Shut up. Don't interrupt. Can't you see Xun Ge'er is talking about important stuff? He then gestured for Xun Ge'er to continue. Right. Let's stick to the important stuff. Xun Ge'er nodded and continued. They took me to a large tent. Man, inside sat several great generals wearing that shiny, fish-scale iron armor. Their presence, compared to our local bumpkin Zhonglao, was like heaven and earth. They asked me where I came from, where I was going, and what I wanted. I poured out all our grievances, like beans from a bamboo tube. I said we were tricked by that old bastard Tongling. Attacking the Han tribe city was never our intention. It was all the Tongling deceiving us, forcing us to be his cannon fodder. I said, we only know the truth now, and we absolutely don't want to be enemies with the Han tribe. As long as the Han tribe is willing to be magnanimous and let us go back to our homes to farm, we'll surrender on the spot. no questions asked. And then? And then? What did the Han tribe say? Someone else couldn't hold back, pressing eagerly. This was more exciting than watching an opera. Can't you let me catch my breath? Xun Ge'er glared at him, calming the crowd's anxious mood before continuing. The leading great general, after hearing my words, first ha-ha-ha'd and laughed uproariously 3 times, making my heart pound. Then he told me they never intended to go on a killing spree in the first place. He said their Han tribe leader had already given them strict orders. Every injustice has its perpetrator, every debt its debtor. Those who attacked their city and killed their soldiers and civilians were Tongling and his henchmen. The Han leader didn't want widespread slaughter and wanton killing, so he ordered them to only punish the main culprits and not to indiscriminately kill the innocent people of Bamboo Island. He also said, let alone us militiamen who aren't even real soldiers, even those bamboo armored troops that the Tongling went to great lengths to create, they didn't kill many of them either. Huh? For real? The Han tribe really won't kill us? Didn't they say they kill on sight, like King Yama himself? I told you so. I told you so. The Han tribe delegation, they were always so friendly with us before. How could they indiscriminately kill innocents? It must have been the Tongling and a few black-hearted Zhonglao spreading lies behind our backs to scare us. So, the Han tribe agreed to our terms? They agreed. Xun Ge'er nodded heavily, finally putting everyone's minds at ease. Then, his tone shifted, a mysterious smile playing on his lips. Guess what else I saw in the Han tribe's main camp? What did you see? Gold ingots or pretty girls? In the Han tribe's main camp, I saw over 3,000 captive soldiers. Xun Ge'er said, his face alight with excitement. It was those 2 fully organized regiments that were swaggering around near our delegation earlier. What's so strange about captive soldiers? Hey, wait a minute. The old gatekeeper suddenly slapped his thigh, his eyes wide as saucers. Those 2 regiments, altogether, that's only about 4,000 men, right? The Han tribe, how did they capture over 3,000 of them? This means almost the entire formation was wiped out. Xun Ge'er smacked his own thigh and gave the old man a thumbs up, praising, Old sir, you're still the sharpest. You got the main point right away. Didn't the Han tribe general tell me? Their leader ordered them to only punish the main culprits, meaning only kill those leading Zhonglao and Tongling's core group. The common soldiers below, even their regular troops, couldn't be killed indiscriminately. So, among those 4,000 men, only a few unlucky ones resisted stubbornly when the Han tribe attacked and were killed on the spot. The rest who fled or surrendered after being captured by the Han tribe, not a single one was killed. And not even a scratch on them. You wouldn't believe it. Xun Ge'er clicked his tongue, a look of envy, jealousy, and hate on his face. Those captives are eating better than us now. 3 meals a day, 2 meals of cornmeal cakes, and 1 meal of fragrant white rice. And salted fish with every meal. It made my mouth water so much. I almost couldn't resist staying there as a captive myself. Ha ha ha. Xun Ge'er's words instantly made everyone in the tent ravenous. Good heavens. The treatment of captives on the Han tribe side was that good. Look at themselves, risking their lives to defend the tribe for Tongling, and they couldn't even fill their stomachs. Their own side treated them worse than the enemy. Where could they even complain about this? This was just ridiculous. Then all those captives you mentioned, what are they doing in the Han tribe's main camp? The old gatekeeper, having seen a bit of the world, asked another crucial question. So many people, just feeding them every day must consume a lot of grain. The Han tribe can't just be feeding them for free like their lords, can they? Hearing this question, the smile on Xun Ge'er's face suddenly froze. It was replaced by a very grave expression, making the hearts of the surrounding crowd thump with unease. Xun Ge'er, could it be? Could it be that the Han tribe isn't treating those captives well? Not treating them like human beings, someone asked in a low voice, filled with worry. Didn't you just say the Han tribe was feeding the captives 3 full meals a day? Xun Ge'er shook his head gravely, sighed deeply, and his tone became exceptionally solemn. Do you all still remember those old, weak, sick, and disabled who were left at home, abandoned by the village, during the migration? Hearing this, the atmosphere in the tent instantly became oppressive. Although the militiamen in this tent didn't have any abandoned old, weak, sick, or disabled in their families, there were always some unfortunate people in their villages. Everyone knew very well that the village hadn't left much food for those people to survive on. Perhaps now, those poor souls might already be. However, just as everyone was feeling somber, Xun Ge'er dropped an even more shocking piece of news. The Han tribe found out about this situation. They immediately dispatched cavalry, riding at top speed, to visit every village, door to door, to count the number of abandoned old, weak, sick, and disabled, and to check the amount of grain stored in their homes. Then, they had those captives form grain transport teams to deliver food to every village. The people we abandoned, the Han tribe, is feeding them. Not only that, they also sent military doctors to every village to treat those elderly and sick people. But we. Xun Ge'er's voice choked, and his eyes reddened. We truly have failed the elders and folks back home. Plop, plop. The tent was deathly silent, save for suppressed sobs and the sound of tears dripping onto the straw mats. Some militiamen, unable to hold back, were already covering their faces and weeping, seemingly reminded of the relatives they had helplessly abandoned in their homeland. After a long while, the old gatekeeper slowly raised his head, a complex light flickering in his cloudy old eyes. In a trembling voice, he said, word by word, "The Han tribe is truly an army of benevolence and righteousness.